Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice, brought to you this week by ACRL and Choice. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director here at Choice, and this week I'm joined by Robert Dugan, the Dean of Libraries at the University of West Florida. Robert, who also goes by Dugan, and I will be talking about his recent book, Financial Management in Academic Libraries, Data-Driven Planning and Budgeting, which he co-authored with Peter Hernan, Professor Emeritus at Simmons College, and is published by ACRL. The book is a terrific introduction and overview of financial management specific to academic libraries. Dugan and Peter cover budget planning, different kinds of budgets, reports, and financial leadership, among many other topics. In this first of 4 episodes, Dugan and I talk about strategic planning, which helps to inform how budgets should be created. Okay, I think we'll start with the idea of strategic planning in academic libraries. Dugan, to begin the book, you note that a strategic plan is the most common type of plan used at academic libraries. Could you talk about why that is? What are the benefits of developing a strategic plan for an academic library? What are the potential drawbacks? And even, what are some frequent hurdles to developing and adhering to a strategic plan?
Well, strategic plans are designed with the entire organization in mind, and they essentially begin with the organization's mission. This is important in the library world, and particularly in academic libraries, because we want to differentiate ourselves from the other parts of the university. We have a unique mission in terms of being the information providers. The reason why the strategic plan is a commonly used instrument or device in academic libraries is because it's the most commonly used in higher education institutions. So because of that, it's easy for the library to then align its mission and its objectives and goals with the institution if they're both following the same structure. And although there's not a set structure to a strategic plan, there are common components about that, and we can talk about that later on. The other reason why strategic plans are used is because a lot of the accrediting organizations request that when they're looking at the library and the institution, they approach it from a strategic planning point of view. So they're going to ask you about your mission, your vision, or your objectives, and that type of thing. The benefits of the strategic plan is that it's composed essentially of actions that are measurable and, from my perspective, budgetable. So, which is a tough word to say, and spell check likes it. But one of the things that comes down to is that we want to make sure that the action is something that we can measure its success or failure, but at the same time we can assign budget numbers to it. And another benefit to it is that the way that the plan is devised, the strategic planning components, we have long-term goals, we have shorter-term objectives, and then we have actions that can be taken over a year or so, which is really helpful when you're trying to approach this. It's not one decade fits all type of thing. The biggest drawback to strategic planning is that sometimes it's seen as busy work. It's the university or the hierarchy within the university requests that you do that, and then it just gathers dust. So people say, "Oh God, we got to do another strategic plan. It's just going to sit in a drawer," and that type of thing. So that's a major drawback to that. Some of the hurdles of this is, you got to get this. You have to get the staff involved, and the staff needs to take ownership on that. And if they see it as busy work or that it's just going to gather dust, they're not going to want to get involved in it. Another part is you got to make sure it's written from the perspective of the user. A lot of times we look at this and go, well, what will we be doing from the library. And what we should be looking at is that what are the users looking for that the library can support? Mm-hmm. And the third part of this is making it flexible so that it can respond to change as opposed to being revised frequently so that it reacts to change. So the flexibility, making sure that it's flexible is another hurdle, but that can be overcome.
Okay. Excellent. You mentioned the components of a long-term strategic plan, mission, vision, goals, and objectives, and so on. Maybe you can kind of list those out and talk about why each of those components are important to the plan.
Sure. There's I think about six. There's basically six major components. Yeah. But the mission is what the library is doing now. And it's what's used for program reviews, it's used for accreditations, but it's the actual messaging of this is what the library is doing. The vision, though, is an ideal outcome. And it's what you would like to do if you had unlimited resources. However, to me, the vision is a lot less important than the mission. However, stakeholders and people always ask, well, what's your vision? It's not that they ask about the mission so much. They go, well, what do you envision happening? So the vision becomes important only because other people ask about it, but it's less important than the mission. Goals are the broad areas that the library want to achieve, such as instilling attitudes or lifelong learning. Then the objectives support the goal. Those are what are measurable. Those are what are budgetable, and those are what can be evaluated. It's what we're going to do. We're going to strengthen a collection, or we're going to provide assistance to user. That becomes an objective. Then underneath the objective are the action statements. It's the actual what we're going to do to help people meet that objective. So an action statement would be is that we're going to help students evaluate information resources. We'll schedule instruction staffed by librarians in order to meet that objective. The appendices in a strategic plan are most often just the backup data, like the copies of surveys and that type of thing that were used to develop the actual strategic plan. So it's something that most people ignore, mm-hmm. but it's important to have them in there just so that people can see, well, this is how they got there.
Library managers at every level need to understand budgets, how to plan a budget and implement it, report on it, and how to run a budget audit. Library managers also need to harness metrics in order to tell their library's story and to advocate for financial support within their institutions. Sometimes letting the numbers tell the story is the best approach, and Robert E. Dugan and Peter Hernan's Financial Management in Academic Libraries provides library managers with tools for finding the best stories and the numbers to back them up. For 15% off the cover price, visit the ALA store. That's store.ala.org and use the promo code ACRL15FM. Do you find that libraries typically spelled out their vision? Or do you find that, as you're talking with, colleagues who are in positions where they're managing a budget, do they necessarily have all of this outlined?
Yes. Okay. I may be one of the few people that don't really like vision statements, only because sometimes I think the visions are so far out there that they're never going to be realized. They're like, we're going to be a top 20 library. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're only in the top 1,000, getting to top 20 is going to be really difficult. So that vision just it's so ideal that it's unachievable. Right. The other thing I look at is with visions is that you have to have. In order to realize it, it may mean that you have unlimited resources. And I don't know any library that has unlimited resources.
Right. So in other words, I guess your counsel then would be, if you're going to create a sort of a mission/vision statement, it needs to be done in realistic terms, because you ultimately will have to attach a budget to it and meet those goals, financially.
Yes, and when outsiders, external stakeholders such as regional accrediting agencies come in and look at the institution and then look at academic programs, they're going to ask, what is your mission, not what is your vision?
Mm-hmm. Let's put this in sort of a, I guess, market context in a certain sense. The world in which libraries are operating is changing even as we speak. There's big publisher consolidation. Obviously, technology is being developed very quickly. Print books are in favor, they're out of favor. Stack space is being converted into other types of uses. How do libraries, manage their strategic plans to keep up with this kind of change going on around them?
Well, that change is exactly why we need the plan. So what we have is, let's just take go into e-resources, the print book versus the e-book. The goal is still developing a collection. What you're looking at that point is a difference in format. We're going to go with print or we're going to go to e. Yeah. Then when you look at this, another goal that comes into that is meeting library space needs. So one of the things that comes down to is that the students may be telling us that we need more space for collaborative learning. So let's look at the two of those combined and go, okay, one of the ways in which we can plan to create more collaborative space for students is to convert or to use more e-formats for print materials, and that way there we can take down the stacks. So what it comes down to is that those two work together. They may be separate goals. One is collection, one is facility, but nonetheless, they work together in order to meet needs. So that's why you need to look at the strategic planning part of this and where the flexibility comes out, because the goals, collection development, facility management, will last for years. However, the objectives should be something that are measurable, like we need more space for seats. We need to look at our collection that right now e-journals are used more than print journals are, and the objective ends have to be aligned so that they meet those needs. I mean, in our fast-paced world, the actions may need to change annually to reflect the needs, but the needs are kind of long-term in terms of that. Hopefully, people are going to still want library collections. It just may be a different format.
Right. Okay. Excellent. In a chapter on planning, you generously provide a copy of the strategic plan for the University of West Florida libraries. Can you talk a little bit about how that document was put together, including, who were the stakeholders involved with drafting it, and then a little bit about the progress that's been made on it so far, and how often, as you sort of just mentioned, how often is it revised and revisited and updated?
The plan was put together by an internal working group within the library. We have library faculty and we have library staff. So both groups were involved in that. And then the drafts were reviewed by all library personnel. The inputs into the planning process came from surveys. We surveyed students. We surveyed. We also serve as a public library. We served. We talked to the community itself about what was going on. We also looked, of course, at the literature, the current library literature, and then we went to other libraries to see what they were up to. Then we looked at how we can use the infrastructure of the library to kind of align ourselves with what the students and the faculty were telling us. The goals and objectives from the plan are ongoing. We haven't met them all yet. I mean, it's just we're hopeful to, but we haven't. And then we just recently, about a month or so ago, we revised our library strategic plan because the university revised their strategic plan. And the good news on that was that I was the chair of the university strategic planning task force. So I kind of knew what was coming. It was a lot easier for us to align it. But even though we have redone some of the objectives essentially remain unchanged. What we did was realign it based upon the university's realignment of its goals. So we're getting there, but we haven't met all of the objectives and certainly not all the goals at this point. Good, another, 50 years we should be there.
Okay. You mentioned the public library component there, and I'm wondering if you could maybe expand on that a little bit. Why that's part of the plan, and then when you went out, you mentioned you also were going out and looking at other libraries for ideas. Did you include public libraries in that sort of discovery process?
Well, the reason we're a public library because we're a public university, and we serve a public need. Now we serve in our area. We have a lot of community users. We have over 1,000 registered community users because of the demands that are placed on the public library. They just can't meet them all. So we fill in on that. Plus, of course, our collection is very different. So we have over 200 computers, or 200 workstations in the library. Some of them are dedicated to the public use of the constituency from that, because we can't let them get into some of our databases. So we've got some that are just students, some that are just public, that type of thing. We did look at what the public libraries were up to when we did when we went out and did the visits, and the reason why is that they handle their seating a lot differently, for their comfortable seating a lot differently than we were handling. So we looked at this and went, well, wait a minute, these Loeb seats are pretty good, so we're gonna borrow that particular style. So we did go out and look at that. It's hard serving them sometimes, hard being serving the public at the same time, because they have very different needs, but at the same time, it's a wonderful part of the mission to have. It helps with community outreach and community engagement.
You just heard from Robert Dugan, co-author along with Peter Hernan of Financial Management in Academic Libraries, which is published by ACRL. This concludes episode 1 of our 4-part series. This episode was brought to you by ACRL and Choice. Be sure to join us for the next episode where we'll discuss how to effectively manage academic library budgets.
As you get more experience with it, you start to see the connection between the budget and the strategic plan. So about 30 years ago or so, I stopped looking at the bottom line and I stopped fretting about it. Yeah. And what I started doing was to work with the parts of the budget that I can influence.
You can search for and listen to all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find all of our episodes on choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship drop-down. If you like what you hear, please take a moment to give us a review on your favorite podcast app. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.